going to the rehearsal that night and that he had seen Michael Jackson rehearse and he looked extraordinary. I can't remember if he told me which rehearsal he was talking about.
But he clearly indicated to you that he had been to a rehearsal, watched Mr. Jackson perform, and described Mr. Jackson's performance as excellent and in glowing terms. Is that accurate?
In substance, yes, and as I mentioned before, Dr. Murray told me repeatedly that Michael Jackson was perfectly healthy, in excellent condition, kind of one of those, don't worry about it, he's great.
Your Honor, I have a document, 6 pages. I'd ask that it be marked People's Number 4, please.
It is.
I'm showing it to defense counsel. Like counsel is reviewing the contract, which was a part of discovery.
Thank you.
May I approach?
You may.
Ms. Jorrie, please take a look at People's Number 4.
Thank you.
And once you looked at it, I have a couple of questions for you.
I'm ready.
Ms. Jorrie, do you recognize the exhibit marked as People's Number 4?
I do.
What is it?
It's the independent contractor agreement draft that was sent to Dr. Murray and that he signed and faxed back to me on the evening of June 24.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Jorrie, does this contract accurately represent the provisions that you included in your creation of the independent contractor agreement between Mr. Jackson and Conrad Murray for his services as a personal physician?
To my best recollection, yes.
You indicated to us that this document was faxed to you on the evening of June 24th, 2009.
That's right.
And in the left-hand side, under the name Dr. Conrad Murray, there's a signature. Is that Dr. Murray's signature as best you know?
I presume so.
And his signature as well is below the individual and the authorized representative. He's signed in 2 places, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Jorrie, do you recognize Dr. Conrad Murray here in the courtroom?
I hadn't met him personally, but I've seen photos of him, and yes, I do.
May the record reflect, Your Honor, that the witness is indicating. Would you describe what the individual...
Of course, everybody knows Dr. Murray sitting right there, two individuals from you.
Thank you, Ms. Jorrie.
The witness has indicated the defendant.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jorrie. Nothing. May I have a moment?
You may.
Ms. Jorrie, I neglected to ask you a question concerning the last page of the contract between Mr. Jackson and Conrad Murray. At the bottom of this contract on page 6, there's a portion that reads, "The undersigned hereby confirms that he has requested producer to..." Thank you. Ms. Jorrie, can you read the line on the bottom of page 6 that begins "the undersigned"?
Yes.
Would you read it out loud, please?
Yes. The undersigned, that's Michael Jackson, hereby confirms that he has requested producer to engage Dr. Murray on the terms set forth herein on behalf of and at the expense of the undersigned.
and then it has Mr. Jackson's name and by and a line. Is that line for Mr. Jackson's signature?
Yes.
And once Mr. Jackson signed that, would that be completion of the contract?
No. All parties had to sign the contract. And while Michael Jackson wasn't a party, there was a provision in the contract that explicitly required Michael Jackson to give written approval of the terms of the contract and stated explicitly that neither of the parties, which would be GCA Holdings and Dr. Murray and AEG Live Productions, neither of those parties would have any rights or obligations to each other unless and until the agreement was signed by Michael Jackson.
And this section reflects that the agreement would be between Dr. Murray and Michael Jackson for the contract services, correct?
Not exactly correct, no. Michael Jackson was giving his consent for AEG to engage Dr. Murray and GCA Holdings to perform medical services for Michael Jackson at his request and at his expense. But legally, it's an independent contractor contract between AEG Live Productions, Dr. Murray, and GCA Holdings with the consent of Michael Jackson.
Very well. Thank you, Ms. Jorrie. I have nothing further.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Brazil. People's Four has been removed. Cross-examination, Mr. Flanagan.
Good morning, Ms. Jorrie.
Good morning.
When was it you were first provided any information about the necessity of there being a contract?
To my best recollection, it was in May. It was in the latter part of May. Mr. Woolley let me know about the need to have this contract prepared.
And when did you first prepare the first draft?
The first draft was not completed until June 15.
Okay. Did Mr. Woolley give you the terms?
He did.
Did he say the terms were $150,000 per month?
He did.
And he gave you the length of the contract, and that was at that point in time September to March?
No, the length of the contract, I don't recall that he gave me the length. I drafted the contract so that it would run to the end of the first leg of the concerts at the O2, which would have been through September 30th, 2009.
Okay, and it was supposed to start May 1st.
I subsequently learned that the payments had been promised, I was told, as when the contract was signed, to be retroactive to May 1st.
Okay, so the contract was apparently never signed?
The contract was not signed by all the required parties.
And no payment was ever made to Dr. Murray?
To the best of my knowledge, no payment was made by my client anyways.
In the contract, the gross compensation to Dr. Murray was $150,000.
Correct.
But he had to provide for himself and for AEG certain items of expense that were not reimbursed to Dr. Murray. Isn't that correct?
I don't know for sure because the contract also provided accommodations for him and his family, airfare to and from London, accidental insurance, health insurance, that AEG would provide him with the medical equipment that he requested and that was approved. So I'm not sure of what expenses he would have incurred, sir.
Well, there was no provision for ground transportation in London.
That's correct.
There was no provision for transportation that he incurred here from Las Vegas to California. Is that correct?
Correct.
And Dr. Murray was also obligated to provide general liability insurance
That's true.
in the sum of at least $2 million.
That sounds right.
And
I would need to look at the contract to be
That would be
certain.
commercial general liability,
Yes,
business auto liability,
correct.
and his own car,
Of course.
workers' compensation insurance,
Yes, and
and
medical malpractice as
he
well.
also had to provide his own medical malpractice insurance.
He did.
Do you know how much those insurances would cost on a monthly basis?
Altogether, no. I don't know.
Now, the cardiopulmonary resuscitation unit, when was that provision added?
That provision was in my very first draft.
So right from the very beginning, Dr. Murray was asking for that.
He identified it as equipment that he would request.
Did he also refer to it as a crash cart?
Not to me.
That equipment, was it your understanding, was not going to be provided for Dr. Murray until AEG had signed the agreement?
It was my understanding it wouldn't be provided till we got to London because that's when he asked it to be provided. And presumably the contract would have been signed by then.
Wasn't this equipment supposed to be provided during the term of the contract?
No.
Doesn't paragraph 3.3 say producer shall provide Dr. Murray for his use during the term with medical equipment requested by Dr. Murray to assist him in performing the services as approved by producer? The equipment will include a portable cardiopulmonary resuscitation unit, saline, catheters, needles, a gurney, and other mutually approved medical equipment necessary for the services.
But the term wouldn't commence until the contract was signed, and he told me he needed the equipment in London.
Did you talk to him